The debate hall buzzed with anticipation, lights blinding white, the air electric with tension. Dozens of journalists lined the edges of the room, their cameras aimed like rifles, clicking and whirring with every movement on stage. A silent countdown ticked down behind the scenes. The nation was watching. Then, without a second more to spare, the lights dimmed to a dramatic hue of blue, and the moderator's voice sliced through the room like a gavel striking hardwood. "Welcome to tonight's debate." And so it began. On the left stood Governor Gavin Newsom, tall, polished, eyes glittering like sharpened glass. Dressed in his signature tailored navy suit, he looked every inch the seasoned politician. He exuded confidence, or maybe it was something closer to controlled aggression. Either way, it commanded attention. Opposite him, leaning casually against his podium, was Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana. Rumpled gray suit, southern drawl thicker than molasses, his demeanor seemed unbothered, even amused. But those who underestimated him always did so at their own peril. This wasn't just another televised debate. This was a collision of world's coastal elite vs. heartland grit. What no one expected, however, was how personal it would get. Newsom struck first. Senator Kennedy. He began, his voice slicing smooth and cold. "While you sit comfortably criticizing policies you don't understand, California has led the nation in economic output, in green energy, in progressive change. You mock it, but we carry this country forward. You peddle outdated, regressive ideas that do nothing for real Americans." The room crackled. The audience leaned forward, but Kennedy didn't flinch. He raised an eyebrow, adjusted his mic, and said, "Well, bless your heart." A low chuckle rolled through the crowd, but Newsom pressed harder. He rattled off statistics with machine gun precision, climate initiatives, GDP figures, urban population growth. He came armed with data, graphs, and every fact imaginable. The moderators nodded approvingly. Twitter lit up. For a moment it looked like a rout, but Kennedy waited, not just for a chance to speak, but for the perfect moment to strike back. And when it came, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't rattle off counter facts. He told a story. "You know, Gavin," he said, leaning into the mic, his southern cadence slow but firm. "I met a woman named Carla down in Shreveport a few weeks ago. Single mother. Works 2 jobs, one cleaning offices, the other at a diner. She doesn't care about your charts. She cares that her rent went up again. She cares that the only grocery store in her neighborhood closed, and she's got to take 2 buses just to get milk." Newsom shifted. Kennedy continued, voice soft now, almost tender. "She doesn't want the government to fix her life. She just wants the chance to fix it herself. But every new regulation, every new tax, every brilliant idea you ship from Sacramento makes life harder." That was the pivot, not rebutting facts, but reframing the human cost behind them. Suddenly, it wasn't just a debate. It was a battle for whose story felt real. Kennedy wasn't done. "You talk about leading the country forward. I reckon you mean towards San Francisco, but out where I'm from, people are watching their small towns crumble while you chase utopias in the clouds. We don't want perfection, we want dignity." The crowd quieted, the cameras closed in. Newsom fired back, but now his voice was taut, slightly too eager. He accused Kennedy of oversimplifying, of peddling nostalgia instead of solutions, and perhaps he had a point. But the room had shifted, because Kennedy wasn't just debating Newsom, he was speaking to millions of forgotten people across the country. But this wasn't the end, just the middle act. 2 subplots were weaving quietly behind the stage, and both were about to crash into the spotlight. The first came from within Kennedy himself. He wasn't always this composed. Years ago, he'd nearly quit politics altogether after the death of his wife, Elaine. Her sudden passing from a stroke had shattered him. For nearly a year he spoke to no cameras, didn't step foot in the Senate. It wasn't grief alone, it was guilt. He'd missed her last call that night, caught in another endless policy meeting. He'd told himself it was noble work, but when she died alone, nothing felt noble anymore. It was a conversation with his daughter that finally brought him back. "Daddy," she said one night over a dinner he barely tasted, "Mama didn't want you to change the world. She just wanted you to be in it." Those words haunted him, and they reshaped how he saw public service, not as grandstanding or legacy building, but as something deeply personal. It was that version of Kennedy rebuilt, tempered by loss, humble in his limits, that now stood across from Gavin Newsom, a man still climbing, still grasping. The second subplot came from the moderator herself, Rachel Lee, a young Korean-American journalist from Oakland, hosting her first nationally televised debate. Beneath her poised surface, she was shaking. Her father, a longtime machinist, had lost his job to automation. Her brother was struggling with addiction, and yet here she was between two powerful men arguing about policies, while wondering if any of it really changed things on the ground. But Kennedy's story about Carla, that pierced her, because it reminded her of her own mother, riding 3 buses to clean hotel rooms. It reminded her why she'd become a journalist in the first place, so she did something bold. She broke from the script. "Senator Kennedy," she said, eyes locking with his, "you talk about dignity, but how do you deliver that without policy?" And Kennedy smiled, not smugly, but softly. "You start by listening, Miss Lee. Then you build policy from that." Silence. Even Newsom blinked. That was the real climax. Not a fact bomb, not a zinger, just a pause and a truth that echoed. The rest of the debate played out almost quietly. Newsom retreated into rehearsed lines. Kennedy offered more stories. When the cameras shut off, the energy in the room had flipped. In the parking lot after the debate, Kennedy stood under a humming floodlight, greeting a small crowd that had gathered. A young man approached him, early 20s, nervous, holding a copy of a well-worn pocket Constitution. "Senator," he said, voice trembling, "I didn't think anyone like you cared about people like me." Kennedy looked him in the eyes. "I do, son, because I am people like you." And that was it. No slogans needed. Later that night, Newsom sat in a dark SUV staring at his phone. His campaign team was already spinning the night, but he felt something gnawing at him, not defeat exactly, but doubt. He'd brought facts, he'd built arguments, but Kennedy had brought people, and that made all the difference. In the days that followed, clips of the debate went viral, not because Kennedy crushed Newsom with stats, but because he cut through them. Not with rage, not with arrogance, just quiet truth. And maybe that's the lesson. In a world where everyone shouts to be heard, sometimes the strongest voice is the one that listens and tells a story that feels like your own.